When I get
Okay.
triggered by someone else's emotion, I'm going to go up into my head and I'm going to engage some technique that says, "Oh, well, let's problem solve that," or let's do this other thing. And I'm sure anybody who's ever worked with someone, you can kind of see when you're in the zone of just in the intuition and in the flow, and there's this aliveness between you. And when it's more mechanical of like, well, let me just kind of help you get the nuts and bolts and like do the thing, and so like the nuts and bolts and the do the thing is a protective part. If I'm someone in a room of 1,000 people and I feel something that 999 people don't, it takes so much self-respect and self-validation for me to hold on to my authenticity when 999 people are like, what the hell are you talking about? So that's how I kind of felt like, even when I was like
Yeah.
walking into preschool or kindergarten, just like, I feel like I'm experiencing something that nobody else is experiencing. But instead of being like, well, they're just insensitive and I'm really sensitive and empathic, I didn't have that frame. So I just said,
Yeah.
something's wrong with me. And that something's wrong with me. And this pain must be mine, just accumulated over time to turn into major depressive disorder, to turn into anxiety disorder, because I was identified with all these people's things. And so there's so many symptoms of what that was like and how painful it was. But that's really the core essence of what I would say was the hardest thing for me as a kid growing up. Soul is another way of saying core authenticity, my soul, my truth, my authentic
Yeah.
nature. These are all synonymous terms in my worldview. If I'm moving fast in my mind or in my body, doing a lot of stuff, taking in a lot of data, reading a lot of books, taking in all this external authority, and I'm moving quickly, trying to get somewhere. The paradox is that my soul already exists. Everyone's soul already exists. And like we talked about earlier, there's these layers on
Hmm.
top of it. So for me, I have more access to my soul when I'm slow and I'm still and I'm silent. But usually, when somebody starts this journey and they slow down and they get silent there and they get still, all these thoughts are going to come up. If anybody who's ever tried starting to meditate, they're just like, I
Yeah.
suck at this. I suck at
Yeah.
this. But the thing
Yeah.
is the thoughts that are coming through my head are coming from parts of me that have unmet need. And I think to my mind, well, this meditation teacher says that I should be able to follow my breath and that I'll be peaceful. But I feel more anxious after 5 minutes doing this than I did when I was rushing around trying to get a bunch of stuff done. The pivot of the phrase self esteem and realizing that self esteem is not an adjective alone, it is also a verb. So if I'm esteeming myself and if I'm validating myself, then I have high self esteem. If I'm constantly seeking external people's approval, then I have other esteem. Other esteem depends on other people's reactions and responses to me that match my belief of how I want to be seen. And that's conditional. If I have high self esteem, then I'm resilient in the face of people disagreeing with my expectations of what I would like them to think of me as. So when it comes to
Hmm.
feedback, all feedback is essentially you're doing something that's causing some friction that most likely you're not aware of. So I think for me, every time I get feedback, there's always going to be a part of me that has a pit in his stomach. It's always going to be like, it's like, hey, Michael, can I, especially my partner, because she gives me the best feedback and the most in my blind spots, she's like, hey, love, can I, I just want to share something with you. And that part of me is like, I messed up. I'm wrong. I'm bad. These are the
Yeah.
automatic things that are there. If I have an opinion that is not the opinion that gets the decision made, but everybody hears my opinion, I'm going to be committed to the decision. It's different than my opinion because I can feel that everyone is considering my opinion and we're just choosing to go a different direction. So, similarly, in a
Hmm.
conversation, if I receive your intention to give me feedback and I take it in and I consider it and I'm not defensive, and then I give you some of it back that feels like a projection, you're going to be like, oh, great. Thanks for receiving that. And yeah, I can see what you mean here. And great. We're both learning in this. I thought I was giving you feedback, but I guess I'm getting some feedback too. And if we're in a really safe
Yeah.
place, most oftentimes when I share my truth with someone, I'm going to get their truth back. So I have to be ready when I give feedback to also receive feedback. And if we're both available for that, I think a lot of learning can take place.
Yes. And what I'm writing down again, and I'm going to keep writing this down every time I hear it, make this a habit so it can stick. There's a part of me that, so when I'm receiving the feedback, I'm thinking to myself, oh, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, of course, of course. And then I start to get triggered a little bit when the feedback's coming in. Maybe my inner is hearing something different than I'm expecting and that I want to hear. And I might say to myself, you know what? There's a part of me that's feeling a little bit of shame, and there's a part of me that's feeling a little bit of defensive. Let me explore that. Let me go a little bit deeper into that. That's what I'm thinking to myself, listener, inside my head as I'm receiving the feedback. There's a part of me that's feeling this. Let me get curious and explore that. That's just back to the baseline of what I'm taking from our conversation right now
It's
is to
it's
explore that, lean in.
yeah, it's
Hmm.
basic and it's also quite advanced, you know? And
Yeah.
I would say too that what's also helpful is a part of me is hearing you say this. Is that what you're actually saying? So it's not just an internal journey if I got to be with the part that feels reactive. That part that's reactive might be picking up some projection from the other person. So if I say,
Mm,
a part of me hears you saying this, is that what you're actually saying? Then it gives the other person a chance to be like,
yeah.
oh no, 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 that's not what I mean. I mean this. Oh, okay, great. Because I was receiving what you were saying through a shame filter, and I made it mean this thing that it doesn't mean because so much of the
Hmm.
friction that people experience are just projections and misinterpretations. It's not actually, we're not actually at odds with each other. We're just at odds with the parts of ourselves that are burdened, that the body's kept the score of, that now we're trying to just be in this place where we want connection, but our parts are so reactive we can't be connected. But really, there's so much more connection than there is disconnection if we can do this internal practice that I'm speaking to. There's a fear I find culturally about going deep or getting real. People say things like, "Whoa, we're getting deep here." Like the different things that people are kind of saying that, it's like, I'm comfortable. Like, where are we
Yeah.
going? Where is it going to go? And, the going back to the body keeps the score. I find that every human being has gone through some really gnarly stuff in their life. And everybody has different ways of compensating for it. And it's layered. And I find that denial gets a bad rap because I think denial is one of the most protective and important defense mechanisms we have as a human being, because there's so much data that has been so hard that we've all lived through and that we're living through now with, conditions in our life and COVID and all sorts of really intense things we've shared as a species. So this denial really keeps us able to function.